Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2026, and today we're talking about what makes a crop profitable and what makes a crop worth growing even if it's not, using old high tunnel plastic for weeding the garden and bed flips. So let's do it. All right, everyone. Welcome to Tilth Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bona fide nerds at Tilth Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast, Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tilthsoil.com to learn more. I hope everyone is having a lovely start to their weeks. Hannah and I went ahead and got our garlic out yesterday. It was kind of probably a few days earlier than I expected, but the stars aligned that it was the most sensible thing to do at that moment, so we went ahead and busted it out. I'm a little disappointed in the garlic size this season, honestly. I think the couple late hard frosts that we had set it back a bit. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I think that's it. I mean, it's still a pretty good garlic harvest. I'm not complaining or anything. Just felt a little bit smaller than the last few years. It's also weird because the soil is pretty nice there. But either way, I'm happy to have that job off the list so I can move those beds into lettuce production probably tomorrow since today is harvest. But soon, nonetheless. I should say I didn't harvest this garlic yet. It's just not quite there yet. This is a different variety. But yeah, I'm waiting for these leaves to be basically brown all the way down to there. Rest is out. I also did some cultivating yesterday morning, and so those beds are all set for the season, I think. It's in the milpa patch and in the tomato patch. The camera overheated a couple times, so you only get one clip from that. Love it when that happens. What are you all up to right now? Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always a highlight to see those, and enjoyed the photos yesterday from Bill Baker over in Ashland, Kentucky. Very cool stuff there, Bill. All right, so today I want to talk about what makes a crop profitable and what makes a crop that's not as profitable worth growing. Obviously, not everyone here who listens to this show or watches the show on YouTube grows food for a living, but this subject might still be of interest because in the same way a professional grower might look at a crop and decide if it's worth growing based on the amount of money it will earn for the amount of money it will take to produce it, a home grower might look at what to grow based on, for instance, that crop's yield per square foot, or how long it takes to grow, or how much it costs at market versus how much money you can, save by producing it yourself, like heirloom tomatoes, for instance, and so on. Profit is just a metric in the same way gardening space is a metric, or the amount of sunlight or water a crop needs can be a metric. It's simply a decision-making tool to whittle down what works and what doesn't in your context. Now, what do we mean by profitability? Well, in general, profit is the amount of money a crop earns minus the expenses it took to produce it. However, the way the term profitable is often used in market farming is not just about how much money something earns minus its expenses, but how much more profit it makes than other things that you grow in the short amount of time that we have to grow anything, like watermelons. I love this example, but these will technically make a profit in the end. In general, the labor and seed costs and water, etc., are not going to be more than the amount of money you earn from selling a few watermelons. But the reason they are not considered profitable is because when you compare the amount of profit a watermelon makes per bed or acre or whatever to other crops, it's quite low. So our average bed of lettuce will yield 75 pounds of lettuce mix in the first cutting, and depending on the time of year, maybe around 40 extra pounds for the second cutting. That's 115 pounds of lettuce, and let's say we sell that at around an average of $10 per pound. That's $1,150 per bed gross. And maybe with labor and seeds and soil mix and water you put in arbitrarily, but probably pretty close to accurate, $25 into that bed. Even if you spent $50, you're still clearing $1,100 for that bed. That's pretty good. Now, on the same space, let's say you really rock at growing watermelons, you were probably going to max out at around 35 marketable melons to be extremely generous. So in this situation where you're getting an okay lettuce crop, but a bomb watermelon crop, you're looking at having to sell each melon at $33 or more to match the lettuce mix. Assuming you can more realistically move them for $10 each, that's something like $350 per bed compared to $1,100 per bed for the lettuce. Now, some of that was arbitrary, obviously, because bed sizes and soil preparation and climate will all have their say in your production, but you get the idea. Melons can make a profit, but they are not as profitable as something like lettuce. But I'm not done with the comparison yet, because it isn't just about like that the watermelons make $350 and the lettuce makes $1,100 per bed. Lettuce takes around 40 days to harvest if transplanted, depending on the time of year, whereas watermelons are close to like 70 or 80 days. So not only does it make a third of the profit, but it makes a third of the profit in almost double the amount of time. Indeed, you can almost get 2 full lettuce crops out of the same bed in the same amount of time that it takes to grow one single watermelon crop. And that matters more for market gardening than it does for other industries, I guess, because as growers, we only have so much time, in farming to make money. Like there's only so much of a growing season. And sure, it's possible to grow stuff in the winter, but everything is incredibly slow in the winter. So you are really just harvesting what you planted in the fall in the wintertime. The growth in the entire winter here in an unheated tunnel, and don't quote me on this, is basically like one summer month. So not very much. So several months equal like one growing month. Anyway, are there reasons that you might grow a crop that is less profitable? Sure. One, you enjoy eating them. That's fine. That's reason enough. 2, biodiversity in the soil and on the farm. That's a really good reason to mix things up a little bit. 3, diversity of offerings, like $1,100 a bed might sound really attractive, but how many beds of lettuce can you reasonably sell? That's a lot of lettuce. And if, a crop fails, well, then you have nothing else to offer that week, which is not great. One thing that can happen is that if you just whittled your farm down to the most profitable crops, you wind up growing just like arugula, lettuce, radishes, maybe some unique baby greens and microgreens, which is fine, but golly, that would be so boring. Also, maybe you have a crop that is less profitable, like say broccoli, but you know that can bring in customers to your market table or booth or whatever. And so there can be a value there. It's not a loss leader exactly because it still has a profit attached, but it is a bit of a, hey, come in, check out what else we have in here item. That can get people into the booth to buy the broccoli, but then maybe also a lettuce head, etc. Anyway, there are more factors than what I've listed here, such as, the amount of time it takes to harvest something, the amount of space it takes up, or weight in the truck, which can cost gas and all that stuff, packing time, washing time, etc. There are also better examples than just like lettuce versus melons, but I'll let you all fill that stuff out in the comments section. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break and return momentarily to discuss waste not, weed not, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Karen Mason, who writes, quote, I know it's May and a very simple/dumb question. No such thing as a dumb question, Karen. They write, I am being gifted a piece of high tunnel plastic that ripped off of someone's high tunnel. Can I use it in my field to kill weeds, or does it need to be black? I am tarping a big chunk this summer so I can use it next year. Should I save it for a better purpose? End quote. All right, so this is a good question on multiple levels because one, it raises the question of how to at least give high tunnel plastic a longer life before it comes waste, and two, allows me to discuss a little more of the ins and outs and oh-nos of solarization, that is, using clear plastic versus black plastic for weed and disease control in a garden. First, indeed, in general, I think solarization is a fine use of leftover plastic. Yes, there is a risk of microplastics, but in my opinion, it's at least getting some more use out of what will otherwise become a waste product. And in fact, you could personally get a few more years out of it if the plastic is treated well and does not have a lot of holes. Okay, so how to use it is a bigger question because opaque, generally black, plastic tarps are not used in the same way as clear plastic. Black plastic does not heat the soil up to the same temperatures as clear plastic will. I've never seen the soil under black plastic go above, say, like 88 degrees or 31 Celsius. Not saying it can't get higher, but when it's trapping the moisture like that, it tends to stay cooler and it's not amplifying the heat. Whereas with clear plastic, I've seen the top 2 inches up over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 48 degrees Celsius in full sun, as measured by my compost thermometer. But it can get as hot as 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 60 degrees Celsius, according to some research, with it getting up into 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 Celsius, down 18 inches. That is very hot for 1.5 feet into the ground, or 45 centimeters. That level of heat, however, would take several days of pure sun. Soil is not so easily penetrated by the heat. The soil is an exceptional insulator, especially when moist, but over time, those temps can of course kill off weed seeds, but they can also kill off things that you want in your soil, like bacteria, fungi, and other beneficial microbes. Studies vary a bit on this, but in general, you don't want to keep clear plastic covering on the soil for anywhere near as long as you'd keep a tarp on. A tarp can spend a year on the soil killing weeds in a really bad, i.e. really bindweedy or really Bermuda grassy, for instance, situation. You would not necessarily want to do that with clear plastic. Generally speaking, for soil life purposes, 2 weeks is about the max that you want to keep clear plastic on the soil. Now, another thing to consider is that the clear plastic should be really well sealed down. If you do not seal the sides down very well, the clear plastic becomes a solar oven and it will dramatically dehydrate the soil, unlike with a tarp where the sealing of the sides isn't quite as big of a deal. It doesn't necessarily dehydrate in the same way. I've had this happen, this dehydration, and it's not super pretty. It's just super dry. Specifically, it was dry down to about 18 inches deep after my inadvertent solar ovening in under 2 weeks. I basically tried to kill a cover crop with it, put the clear plastic on, and then it just drained all the humidity out of the top because it was on a little bit of a hill. So not great. Now, the other thing about that is if stuff under the plastic can breathe, the clear plastic can create a nice warm greenhouse effect where it can actually not only make plants, i.e. weeds, grow, but also germinate weed seeds at lower levels. This is why I found it's hard to use clear plastic to terminate cover crops beyond the dehydration thing. It tends to germinate weed seeds deeper into the soil beneath the cover crop. Weed seeds that are a little lower in the soil profile and would not, I believe, have germinated without the solarization. So anyway, yes, the clear plastic can be used to just in really quick bursts, really well sealed around the sides and tight to the ground. But it isn't exactly the same thing as an opaque tarp. Anyway, that's about the gist on that. Let me know any other questions or comments that you have on solarization. Otherwise, let's take one last quick break and then talk bed turnover, which I recognize is kind of an ironic term because we won't be flipping the soil over. And it also is not something you eat like a normal turnover. It's just a weird term. Anyway, be right back. Over.
Travel on by locomotive, turning of the century. See their fine clothes, soot is turning, satin's black as the night can be.
All right, so I thought we would do another technique segment here and discuss bed flips. Now, I thought about just doing this, this one in the field, but I haven't had a good chance to shoot just one of those from start to finish yet. I think I will actually maybe in the coming weeks, but for the moment, I think I will just do this segment. And I should also say I've been working with SARE, S-A-R-E, to produce a pamphlet all about this exact subject, which I will let you all know about when it's done because it will be free. No, not like, go, you're free, but like, go, you cost no money. Free. Anyway, love SARE for making so much of their content free. Anyway, let's talk some flipping bed flipping. Bed flip is when you go from one crop to another and you want to do that as quickly as possible to maximize the bed space, sort of like we talked about in segment 1, right? So anyway, there are a few main principles to keep in mind when discussing bed flips beyond the normal no-till principles. The first is that where possible, we like to leave the roots of the previous crop in the ground, but we also want that previous crop to die. So for lettuce, if you cut it too high on the stalk when you are, cropping it out, the industry term for removing a crop, then it may grow back. You need to cut it at the soil surface or just slightly below to terminate it. You can do this with a knife, a harvest knife generally, or you can do it with a mower set really low to the ground. You can also do it with a weed whacker and a bush blade. Now, there are crops like kale and collards and most brassicas that need to be cut below the surface to die, which can be kind of a pain, I'll admit. For that, you need, something like loppers or whatever that can get right under the soil, and you just cut right below the soil surface on each stem. Now, will that guarantee they die? No, and I say this all the time, but often my previous crop is my biggest weed issue, but it's rarely much of an issue. It's usually easy to get rid of, and cutting it below the soil surface will make a huge difference in how much comes back. It's usually not very much. And again, when they do come back, it's usually just hit it with a hoe and they're good to go. Some crops will not give up so easily though, like chicories, for instance. Those really have to either be cut really, really low or just removed entirely. And then other crops like carrots, beets, radishes, garlic, turnips, those are all a dream to flip beds with because, well, they are removed at harvest. That makes it super simple. So the bed flip protocol there will be simply remove the crop, cultivate out the weeds, amend if need be, rake, and then plant. Super easy. Another method for removing the crop residue is with tender things like baby greens. After the last harvest, you just simply mow it down, apply a little compost and a lot of moisture, then cover that with landscape fabric or tarp or maybe even a thick burlap, I don't know yet, and let it decompose for a week, and then voila, clean bed, ready to plant. Now, how does any of that differ from a tillage bed? Well, in a tillage bed flip, the crop is generally mowed or removed entirely, like roots and all. If removed entirely, you lose some of the soil organic matter and microbes and nutrients that are there. If tilled in, the soil is going to require 2 or more weeks to digest. And then there is the matter of, new weed seeds and loss of carbon and all those things. But using one of those no-till removal methods described above, that means that you can go directly into the soil with a light amount of soil prep. Anyway, them's the basics, but let me know what questions you all have about flipping beds, and we can tackle the actual prepping and planting of the soil at a later date. Yes, even seeding when there are still roots in the ground from the previous crop. I got your back. And of course, like I said, I wrote a whole long pamphlet dealing with this exact issue that should come out soon. I'm actually not sure when it comes out. And I wrote a whole book that is out that details much of what we talk about here on this podcast, except for soccer, unfortunately. Didn't have a good way to add that one in there. But anyway, for now, I think we are good to go. Good night till Tuesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear.
But there's a new line, the lack of wanna, the cold is green.
Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. A big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Matt Marshall. Shouts, Matt. Thanks for joining the earthworms over there. All right, so as you will remember, Lonnie is the hero of our story and the host of a local gardening show in Tampa. And he gets an interesting call one day from a listener outside of Tampa, down in the Everglades, in fact. And the caller says, so I found an orchid the other day, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but it spoke to me. I couldn't hear exactly what it said, but it spoke and then it died, and I have no way to prove it, but have you ever heard of anything like that? And of course, that did sound a little crazy to most of the listeners, but they're used to, the quirky local call-ins. But it didn't sound crazy to Lonnie, because Lonnie had heard something like that before. He'd seen it happen when he was young, when he was a little boy. He had spent years telling himself, no, you didn't see what you thought you saw, or rather hear what you thought you heard. And although he politely listened to the comments from the caller about the orchid, he didn't really say anything, and he knew, however, he had to go see if he could find it. So that weekend, Lonnie traveled back to the Everglades near where he grew up to see if he could find a talking orchid and hear what it had to say. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll continue sign up spending tomorrow. Yeah, Wednesday. That'll be fun. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.
Stay right by electric light upon the road of anthracite.
The grill is shot. The chairs are held together by optimism. And what happened to the rug? Sounds like your outdoor setup is not ready for patio season. Fix it all with Wayfair. Shop Wayfair for grills, rugs, furniture, and more. With 20 million 5-star reviews, room of choice delivery, and expert setup on qualifying orders, it's never been easier to do more for less. Get 10% off your first eligible purchase. Hurry to wayfair.com or download the app now.
Wayfair.